I think that limitations and restrictions lead into interesting ideas. Sometimes even crazy ideas that nobody else would even consider.
Hi there guys, I'm Aaron here from Mirror Gaming, coming at you behind the scenes of EGX London 2023, when walking around the halls I found a rather interesting individual. There he is. How does it feel to almost be at the finish line with Alan Wake 2 after all these years?
It's wonderful and it's terrifying. But that's what the game is all about, the duality, light and darkness. It's been such a long journey with this game. No matter how we plan things, these final weeks end up always being this kind of mad rush to the finish line, and there is still these bugs and they need to be fixed, and obviously there is so much things that nobody knows about, even if we talk about it, to be discovered.
I was lucky enough to go and preview the game behind the scenes earlier this year at Gamescom, and one thing I feel like you cannot help but notice with Alan Wake 2 is just how drop dead gorgeous it looks. And
thank you.
No worries. On a pure technical level, what's an example of something, and I'm sure there are loads of things possible now in Alan Wake 2 all these years on, that you would never have dreamed of being able to do in the original Alan Wake?
The fidelity, like the amount of detail. It's many times over what we could do for Control, which is our previous game. So that gives you an idea from one game to the next. It's already very different. A lot of lighting related things I feel as part of it, and that light and darkness being in the core of the Alan Wake experience in any case, like a lot of work has gone into that, and a lot of possibilities. It looks very realistic. It's dynamic, and then on top of that still like this artistic stylization. Our art team, and especially Janne Pulkkinen, who is our art director leading it, wonderful artistic geniuses, all of them.
Video game budgets, I feel like obviously they're a hot topic at the moment in the AAA space in terms of like they can tend to balloon and stuff, but I recall that Control was made for a relatively modest sum compared to a lot of other AAA games out there. I was just wondering, what's the remedy secret to doing this, and why can some other devs tend to struggle with that?
We struggle for sure. Everybody struggles.
Yeah.
Game projects are large, very complicated, art and creative ideas coming together with technical things, and often the tools and the engines, it's almost like a moving platform. That said, I think that limitations and restrictions lead into interesting ideas and force you to be creative. Like, okay, we can't do this on this scale, we need to find another solution. You would never find that other solution unless you were forced to do it, but usually you do, and usually it actually ends up being something more unique and something more interesting than it would have been. Yeah, the scale is massive, even in AAA. We are like much smaller still in many ways than the biggest studios and the biggest budgets out there. The way we need to look at it is we need to be original. We need to come up with ideas, sometimes even crazy ideas that nobody else would even consider. But if that excites us and we get to create something that stands out because it's different and unique, then that is to our advantage, because competition is also fierce. But yeah, the budgets are going up, and partly that is because of the increased fidelity and detail. It means that basically the same size of an environment, making that now to the quality level that is required is much more expensive than it used to be.
Yeah.
And
it's not like you guys would do something crazy like, I don't know, create two different settings where you play two different characters or anything like that and make it that just make it too easy for you, right?
Yes. Sometimes like maybe there is kind of this schizophrenia that cool idea, let's do this, and then down the line going like, who came up with this idea?
It's been 13 years since the release of the original Alan Wake and this one here. There must have been several different versions of Alan Wake 2 in your head in that time. How does that compare to the version we're getting now?
We have tried to get this started through the years several times, created a concept for it. Certain elements, of course, have been around since then. Key characters, many of them, the location, the Pacific Northwest, New York even, and then the foundation of the supernatural lore that was established and created, all of that there. Beyond that, quite a lot of new things, especially for this last concept that we created, just wanting to be really ambitious with interactive storytelling. The whole structure of the experience is something that we came up for this, and obviously, the fact that this is, game-wise, a survival horror game, which is still, in my mind, quite different from what the original game was.
We talked about the kind of sharp turn into a more stricter style of horror for Alan Wake 2, and obviously we know that in the game players will be getting to play as Alan Wake, but obviously a new character called Saga Anderson, both on two planes of reality, I guess, at least I would call it. Feel free to not say a word. But I was just wondering, is there any difference between the types of horror that Saga will undergo compared to Alan, and if so, what are they, and how do you approach the two different styles?
The way we have been looking at it while working on this is that maybe we lean slightly more into supernatural horror with Saga, in her experience, as we are kind of like starting off more grounded in real world of the Pacific Northwest. Meanwhile, the whole kind of like nightmare reality and the echo chamber of it that kind of draws from Alan Wake's mind, there we are more operating with psychological horror. Just kind of like him trying to understand, him seeing things that come out of his mind now manifesting in the reality around him.
A certain Mr. Casey, perhaps?
Yeah, I mean, he used to write, like he made his success as a writer, writing crime-ridden kind of crime stories with a fictional detective called Alex Casey set in New York City. So now that world manifests itself around him.
Well, speaking of that world, obviously it was earlier this summer that we got a good look at a character called Mr. Door. And for that character, you hired what I think is one of the best working actors from Britain today, a man by the name of Mr. David Harewood.
He's wonderful.
Yeah, what was it like to lock him down? And did you have to walk him through, because obviously multi-layered game like Alan Wake 2, did he understand the concept, and how big a role will Mr. Door play?
We approached him. He was interested and wanted to do it, and then he came out and said that he has played most of Remedy games and he loves them and is a fan of our games.
Oh, that's exactly what you want to hear, isn't it? As someone who wants to put them in your game. Yeah, that's
and yeah, like he's wonderful in the role, and it was really a pleasure working with him.